I'm 91 years old, and I know the exact second my marriage ended. Not the day my wife packed her bags, not the afternoon she handed me the papers, not the morning I woke up in an empty house and finally understood what silence actually sounds like. No, I know the exact second. May 14th, 1985, 6:47 in the evening. 3 seconds. That's all it took. 3 seconds to destroy a 52-year marriage. And I didn't notice for 26 years. I spent 42 years as a corporate attorney. My entire career was built on finding the precise moment a contract was breached, the exact clause, the exact date, the exact word that changed everything. I was very good at it. I won cases worth hundreds of millions of dollars because I could look at 1,000 pages of documents and find the one sentence that mattered. After Eileen left me, I turned that skill on my own life, and what I found almost killed me.
Let me tell you who I was, because you need to understand the kind of man who does what I did. I graduated top of my class from Georgetown Law in 1958. I was hired by one of the largest firms in Philadelphia before I even passed the bar. By 35, I was a partner. By 45, I was running the Mergers and Acquisitions Division. By 55, I had a corner office on the 38th floor with a view of the entire city and a secretary who knew not to put calls through during market hours. I was respected. I was feared, actually, in depositions. Opposing counsel would see my name on a filing, and their billing rates would go up because they knew it was going to be a fight. I was proud of that. I thought being feared was the same thing as being important. I was married to Eileen McKenna Caldwell for 52 years. We met in 1959 at a friend's wedding. She was wearing a yellow dress, and she laughed at something the bartender said, and I remember thinking, that woman is the most alive person in this room. I proposed. 4 months later. She said yes, but she also said, Ray, you have to promise me something. Promise me you'll always come home. I promised. I kept the letter of that promise for 52 years. I came home every night, but I broke the spirit of it almost immediately. Eileen left me in 2011. I was 78 years old. The boys were long gone. Michael was in Seattle, David in Chicago. The house was empty except for the two of us, and honestly, it had been empty for years, even when we were both in it. She didn't scream. She didn't throw things. She didn't cry. She just sat me down at the kitchen table one Sunday morning in March and said, Ray, I've been gone for a long time. I think it's time my body caught up with the rest of me. I said, What are you talking about? She looked at me with this expression I will never forget. It wasn't anger. It wasn't sadness. It was exhaustion. The kind of tired that goes all the way down to the bone. She said, That's exactly the problem. You don't know what I'm talking about. You never did. She moved to a small apartment in Bryn Mawr. She took almost nothing. The photos, her mother's china, her books, that's it. 52 years, and she packed it into the back of a sedan in one afternoon. After she left, I did what I always did. I analyzed. I went through our marriage like it was a case file. I was looking for the breach the moment the contract failed. And I found it. But it wasn't where I expected. Here's what 42 years of law and 52 years of marriage failure taught me. And I want to be clear. These are not lessons I learned gracefully. These are lessons that were beaten into me by loneliness and regret. Every single one of them cost me something I can never get back. The first thing, marriages don't end in explosions, they end in whispers. Everyone thinks divorce is a bomb. One day everything was fine, and then someone has an affair, or someone throws a plate, or someone says something unforgivable and the marriage detonates. That's what I expected to find when I went looking for where mine went wrong. I was looking for the explosion. There wasn't one. What I found instead was a pattern so quiet, so small, so ordinary, that I had missed it entirely while it was happening. And by the time I could see it, 26 years had passed, and my wife was gone. May 14th, 1985. A Tuesday. The boys were 9 and 7. Eileen had made pot roast, which she only made on Tuesdays because it was my favorite, and Tuesdays were my long days at the firm. I came home at 7. I sat down. I turned on the evening news. The boys were talking about something at school. Eileen sat across from me and she said, "How was your day?" And I said, without looking at her, "Fine, quiet, I'm trying to watch this." 3 seconds. I don't even remember saying it. I had to reconstruct it from what Eileen told me years later during the divorce mediation. She remembered the exact words. She remembered the pot roast. She remembered that the boys went quiet. She remembered everything. I remembered nothing. That's the point. That's the whole point. In that moment, and Eileen told me this herself, something shifted inside her, not dramatically, not even consciously, but somewhere deep in her chest, in that place where you keep your hope for another person, something closed. She didn't decide to leave me that night. She decided something much worse. She decided to stop reaching for me. And I never noticed. Not once in 26 years did I notice that my wife had stopped reaching. The second thing, there is no such thing as a small moment in a marriage. I used to think there were big moments and small moments. The wedding was a big moment. The birth of our sons, those were big moments. The promotion, the new house, the anniversary trip to Paris, those were big moments. And then there were small moments. Dinner on a Tuesday, a question about my day, a hand reaching across the bed at night. I treated those small moments like they didn't count, like they were filler between the scenes that mattered. I was wrong. The small moments are the only moments that matter. Let me tell you about my client, Arthur Pennington. I represented him in his divorce in 1994. Arthur was 61 years old, wealthy, successful, good-looking man. His wife left him for their dentist. Arthur was furious. He wanted to know when the affair started. He wanted dates, evidence, proof. He wanted to build a case. I investigated. And you know what I found? The affair started the day Arthur forgot his wife's birthday, not a milestone birthday, her 53rd. He just forgot. And that evening, she went to a dinner party alone because Arthur was working late. And the dentist was there, and the dentist asked her how her birthday was, and she started crying, and the dentist handed her a napkin and said, "You deserve someone who remembers." Arthur lost his wife over a birthday he didn't bother to put on his calendar. He lost her over a moment he considered too small to notice. I represented Arthur, and I won him a favorable settlement, and I never once applied that lesson to my own life. I went home that night, and Eileen asked me if I wanted to take a walk, and I said I had briefs to review. The third thing, silence is not peace. Silence is surrender. After 1985, our house got quieter. Not suddenly, gradually, like the volume on a radio being turned down one notch at a time over decades. Eileen stopped asking about my day. Then she stopped telling me about hers. Then we stopped eating dinner together because I started eating at the office. Then the conversations at home became purely transactional. The roof is leaking. Michael needs braces. Your mother called? I thought this was normal. I thought this was what mature marriages looked like. The passion fades, the conversation slows down, and you settle into a comfortable silence. I actually used that phrase with a colleague once. Eileen and I have a comfortable silence. He laughed. He said, Ray, comfortable silence is what happens between people who are content. What you're describing sounds like a ceasefire. He was right. It was a ceasefire. Eileen had stopped fighting for my attention because I had made it clear, 3 seconds at a time, that my attention was not available. And instead of noticing the silence and being alarmed by it, I was relieved by it. No demands on my time, no interruptions, no one asking me to be present when I wanted to be somewhere else. If your house has gotten quieter and you haven't asked why, you are in trouble. Silence between two people who love each other is warmth. Silence between two people who have given up is a grave. The fourth thing, you're training your spouse every single day, and you don't know what you're teaching them. In 1992, our 30th wedding anniversary, Eileen planned a dinner at the restaurant where I proposed. She bought a new dress. She made reservations 2 months in advance, and on the day, I called her at 4 in the afternoon and told her I couldn't make it. A deal was closing. It couldn't wait. It could have waited. Everything could have waited. But I had trained myself to believe that my work was urgent and my marriage was permanent, that Eileen would always be there, but the deal might not be. So I chose the deal. Again. Eileen went to that dinner alone. She sat at our table alone. She ate alone. She came home and she didn't say a word about it, not one word. She changed out of the dress, hung it in the back of the closet, and went to bed. I found that dress when I was cleaning out the house after she left, still in the back of the closet, still had the tags from the store on it. She never wore it again. I taught Eileen, over 52 years, that she was less important than my work, less interesting than the evening news, less urgent than a phone call from a client. I taught her that her feelings were an interruption, her needs were a negotiation, and her presence was furniture. I didn't teach her this with cruelty. I taught her this with indifference, and indifference, I learned, is worse than cruelty. At least, cruelty acknowledges that the other person exists. The fifth thing, the moment you realize what you've lost is always too late. After Eileen left, I tried to get her back. Of course I did. I sent flowers. I wrote letters. I called. I showed up at her apartment with apologies I should have made 30 years earlier. I told her I understood now. I told her I could change. She let me in. She made me coffee. She listened to everything I said. And then she said something that broke me open in a way I didn't think was possible at 78 years old. She said, Ray, I believe you. I believe you finally see it. But I don't have anything left. I spent 26 years waiting for you to turn off the television and look at me. I spent 26 years hoping the next dinner, the next anniversary, the next vacation would be the one where you chose me. I used up all my waiting. There's nothing left to give you. I said, there has to be something. She said, There was so much. You just didn't want it when it was there. That was the last real conversation we had. She died in 2019, pancreatic cancer. Quick. Michael called me from the hospital. I drove there, but she was already gone. I sat in the parking lot for 2 hours because I couldn't make myself go inside. I couldn't face seeing her and knowing that the last 8 years of her life were spent in a small apartment, free of me, and probably happier for it. I want to tell you about the night I can't forgive myself for. Not May 14th, 1985. That one haunts me, but there's another one that's worse. It was sometime in 1997. I don't know the exact date because I wasn't paying attention. Of course I wasn't. Eileen was in bed next to me. It was late, maybe midnight. I was half asleep, and I heard her crying, not loudly, softly, the kind of crying you do when you don't want the other person to hear. I heard it. I was awake enough to hear it, and I made a choice. I pretended to be asleep. I lay there, 3 inches from the woman I had promised to love and protect, and I listened to her cry, and I did nothing. Because if I acknowledged the crying, I would have to deal with it. I would have to ask what was wrong. I would have to have a conversation I didn't want to have. It might take hours. I had court in the morning, so I lay still. I controlled my breathing. I waited for it to stop, and eventually it stopped, and she turned away from me and faced the wall, and I fell asleep. I think about that night more than any other night of my life. I think about the sound of her breathing in the dark. I think about how her shoulders shook. I think about the 3 inches of mattress between us that might as well have been the Atlantic Ocean. She needed me, not my money, not my career, not my reputation, not the house or the car or the corner office. She needed me to roll over and put my arm around her and say 4 words. I'm here. What's wrong? 4 words, maybe 5 seconds. It would have cost me nothing except the comfort of pretending I didn't know my wife was suffering. That was 28 years ago. I can still hear her crying. I will hear it for whatever time I have left. And the worst part, the absolute worst part, is that I will never know what she was crying about. I never asked. Not that night, not the next morning, not ever. I added it to the long list of things about Eileen that I chose not to know. Here's what took me 91 years to understand, and I need you to hear this because it could save your marriage, your family, your life. Everyone thinks a marriage ends because of something big, an affair, a betrayal, a terrible fight, and sometimes that's true. But most marriages, the ones that die quietly, they don't end because of one big thing. They end because of 1,000 tiny things, 1,000 moments where one person reached for the other and the other person didn't reach back. You're not looking for the bomb. There is no bomb. You're looking for the slow leak, the barely noticeable hiss of air leaving a tire so gradually that you don't notice until you're stranded on the side of the road wondering what happened. Every time your wife asks how your day was, and you grunt without looking up, that's a drop of air. Every time your husband suggests a walk, and you say you're too tired, that's a drop. Every time someone in your house reaches for connection, and you treat it like an inconvenience, that's another drop. And one day, and you will not see this coming, the tire is flat, and you are standing there stunned, asking, when did this happen? And the answer is, it happened every day for years while you were busy watching the news. So here's what I want you to hear, and I'm talking to a specific person right now. I'm talking to the man who came home tonight and sat on the couch and picked up his phone while his wife was telling him something about her day. I'm talking to the woman who turned away when her husband tried to hold her hand because she was annoyed about something he did last week. I'm talking to you right now, today, maybe within the last hour. Someone you love tried to reach for you. A question, a touch, an invitation, a look, and you probably didn't even notice because you were somewhere else. Your phone, your work, your thoughts, your exhaustion, your resentment. You have about 3 seconds to respond to that reach. 3 seconds. And in those 3 seconds, you are either building your marriage or dismantling it. There is no neutral. There is no standing still. You are either turning toward the person you love or turning away. And if you turn away enough times, they will stop reaching. And once they stop reaching, it is almost impossible to get them to start again. If you need permission to put down what you're holding and look at the person in front of you, here's your permission. From a 91-year-old man who would give every dollar he ever earned, every case he ever won, every accolade he ever received, for one more Tuesday night with Eileen, one more pot roast, one more, "How was your day?" And this time, I would turn off the television. I would look at her. I would say, "Tell me everything. I'm 91 years old. I live alone in a retirement community in Pennsylvania. My sons call on holidays. My grandchildren visit twice a year. I have a nice room with a view of a garden that someone else tends. I spent 42 years finding the exact moment contracts were broken, and when I finally turned that skill on my own life, I found what I always find. The breach was small, the breach was quiet, the breach was 3 seconds long on an ordinary Tuesday, and everything after that was just the consequences playing out in slow motion. Your marriage is not a contract. It is a living thing. And living things don't die from one wound. They die from neglect, from not being fed, not being watered, not being seen. They die from 1,000 ordinary moments where someone chose something else. That's the truth I learned too late. Love doesn't leave in a hurricane. Love leaves on a Tuesday evening, so quietly. You don't even hear the door close.
But here's why I'm telling you this. Not to make you sad, not to make you afraid. I'm telling you because you still have time. Eileen is gone. My marriage is gone. Those 26 years of reaching that I ignored, those are gone. I can't get any of that back. But you can. You can put down your phone tonight. You can look at the person across from you and actually see them. You can answer the question, "How was your day?" like it's the most important question anyone has ever asked you. Because it is. It is someone saying, "I still care. I'm still here. I'm still reaching." Don't make them stop reaching. Go home tonight. Turn off the television. Sit across from the person you chose and let them tell you about their Tuesday. Listen like your marriage depends on it. It does. That's all I've got. I hope to God you use it.